miss it. We're just going to talk about what is psychology. We're going to introduce some of the perspectives that we're going to take in terms of understanding psychological concepts. So we're going to do a little activity in which you are going to be asked to draw something. So you're going to need paper and writing utensils of sorts. So just recognize at some point, grab those. And then I'm just going to introduce you to the course. I'm going to walk you through Canvas so that you kind of have an understanding of how I've organized things and what my kind of expectation is going to be there. And hopefully we can kind of work through all this together. We have a week under our belts, so we're feeling pretty good about Canvas, about all the online stuff. But yeah, so that's kind of our plan for today. Expect to be here for about 45 minutes to an hour. That's all we're going to do today. Your actual content and whatnot is going to start tomorrow, but it is public, so you can access it today if you want to get a head start. So again, we'll talk about that real quick. But first, like I said, I'm going to start by just introducing myself. My name is Mrs. Ellis. This is my 4th year teaching at Wayzata High School. I have taught the 12th grade IPSA class. I've taught U.S. history, and now this is actually my 1st year teaching psychology. Last term I taught AP psychology, so for those of you who are thinking potentially about taking AP psychology in your future, this is the first half of AP psychology. We have it set up in a way at the school that AP psychology is a 2-term course. But if you take right, you can just take the first half. That's regular psychology. You would like to take AP psychology in the future, that's just adding on the second half of the textbook. So in this class, we're going to go over chapters 1 through 8. And then AP goes through chapters 9 through 16. So just kind of recognize if that's something that you are interested in the future. I'm your girl. Yeah, it's super exciting. So that is a little bit about me. I went to the University of Minnesota. For my undergraduate degree, I got 2 degrees in history and psychology. And then I went back and got my master's in secondary social studies education. I subbed for a year in there. And then I got hired here. I'm originally from Minnetonka. Don't hold it against me. For those of you who haven't heard this before, my mom actually still teaches there. My husband and I just bought a house. Well, just about a year and a half ago, bought a house here in Minnetonka. If you know where Snuffy's is. Anybody Snuffy's people? Thumbs up. Where are my Snuffy's people at? Yeah. We live right by Snuffy's, so not far. We've been here about a year and a half. We actually just painted our house. Here, I'll show you. Look at how this is the new paint color. It's not the pink house. That's our neighbor. And yes, that is in fact, pink house. But our house, we just painted it that color, which is sweet because it used to be yellow and green, which is because the Packers suck and the Vikings rock. Trying to think, what else do you need to know about me? You'll probably get a lot of anecdotes about my life throughout, even in I've recorded a bunch of online lectures. Just bear with me. I guess I'm a weirdo. I didn't realize how weird I was until I started recording myself. So bear with me, laugh at me. We'll kind of get through this together. Hopefully it'll be a little bit more enjoyable that way. So yeah, that is me. I am going to be pretty available to you guys via email, setting up Zoom meetings, one-on-ones. If you have questions, I'll have office hours. So I will be very available to you guys if you need me, if you have questions, if you're working through content, whatever. So just know that I'm here. Yeah, so let's get started. I'm gonna share my screen with you. We're gonna, like I said, go through a little bit of content. And by content, I mean just really introducing psychology. Present this, and we'll get started right here. If people hop on, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat function, or even seriously just unmute yourself and be like, hey, Miss Ellis. I love it. I'd rather have it be like that than like just radio silence on the other end. So with that, I already mentioned that when we're talking about regular psychology, we are talking about the first kind of half of AP psychology. In fact, this is the textbook. Obviously, you do not have a paper copy of this because you can't go to school and get a paper copy of it, but there is an online version of it. Regular psychology is going to be covering chapters 1 through 8. So we are going to be looking at, and I'll just kind of give you a rundown, an intro to psych. We're going to be talking about consciousness, dreams, sleeping. We're going to be talking about development, sensations, and perceptions. How do we see things? How do we hear things and taste things? What is actually going on in our brains while we're engaging in those types of activities? We're going to talk about learning, and we're going to talk about memory. So those are kind of all the big picture topics that we are going to look at in regular psych. Again, if you are somebody who is interested or is already signed up for, I guess you would probably already be signed up for it if you were taking AP psychology next year. That's when we're going to be covering things like abnormal psych, psychological disorders, therapy, thinking and learning, motivation, all sorts of stuff. So just note, textbook split in half. We are the first half of the textbook. So with that said, I don't know how to do this. Okay, psychology is the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, especially those affecting behavior in a given context, right? And so when we talk about psychology, a lot of it is based in why do we behave the way that we do, right? Why do we respond to certain situations in the way that we do, right? Why are some things scary? Why do some things make us cry? Why do some things make us giggle, right? What's going on in our brains and in our bodies to respond to certain stimulus in the way that we do? And that's basically it. And people have throughout history kind of critiqued whether or not psychology is in fact like a science, right? It's not like biology or like a mathematics course that you're working with straight up concrete numbers, right? It's super abstract. You think about like how in the world we're going to talk about like sleepwalking. Is sleepwalking dreaming? How do you study that? How do you definitively say like somebody who is sleepwalking is in fact not dreaming, which has been studied, which has been like concluded that is the case? Like how do we go about doing that, right? It's super abstract. There are scientific like numbers that we can assign to things, which we'll talk about in unit 1 with observational definitions, right? We can look at brain scans, we can do some of the more sciencey stuff, but in the end, what we are studying in psychology is far more abstract than kind of the mainstream scientific studies. So we're gonna start maybe by watching just a quick video, maybe, yes, here it is. Okay, so we're gonna watch this quick video. For those of you who have had me me as a teacher in history or have taken US history and watched a crash course, you know, hi, I'm John Green, this is Crash Course US History, and today we're gonna talk about insert topic. This is actually John Green's brother, and he does the psychology crash courses. So you're all welcome. This is a different kind of avenue from crash course, but same guy. Let's take a second and watch this.
Hello and welcome to SciShow Psych. I am Hank Green, one of your hosts, and twice a week we will be here exploring the science of what makes humans tick. That's right, I said it. Psychology is a science. People have been debating this pretty much since psychology started back in the 1800s. You can sort of see why people might think psychology doesn't count as a science. The study of the human mind is often missing the tightly controlled experimental conditions and conclusive results that you'll find in other fields like astronomy or chemistry. And yeah, psychology research can be tricky because brains are complicated, but it's still a science. Now, defining science is surprisingly hard because there's no standard definition everyone agrees on. But most people would probably agree with this. Science is systematically observing natural events, then using those observations to develop laws and principles. Then,
all right, let's do this. Can you guys see me? You can see me. Good, that's something. Could you hear the video? I'm just looking at this chat. Yes, also. Okay, well, why don't we just skip this for now? I'll figure out a better way to play videos. Actually, well, I'm not gonna really do this at all. It won't be an issue in the future. But really, I'll link this Google or this YouTube video. Oh my gosh, where'd my chat go? In this chat, so that if you would like to kind of get some more insight into why psychology is in fact a science, that'll be there for you. Okay, so don't worry too much about it. Not a huge deal. We'll continue kind of going on and talking about the perspectives of psychology, and that's what we need our pen and paper for. You are actually going to be tracing your hand. Let's go back all the way to kindergarten and trace our hands, because we are going to use this kind of point of reference throughout the entire course, like the entire course. So go ahead, take a second, trace your hand. I'll show you my example. That's mine. You can see my ring makes my ring finger look kind of wonky. But this is my example. This is what kind of the end goal is going to look like as we are talking about different psychological perspectives. So trace your hand, take a second, and then we will get started. Note, you will be sharing these. You're going to take a picture of them and sharing them on a discussion board. One, so we can kind of just like get to see who is in our class, get a sense of what our class is like, even though we're online. And then, yeah, so we'll go from there once you have your hand drawn. Okay, team, hopefully that you could draw your hand pretty quickly. We've graduated from kindergarten. So again, this is what the end goal is going to look like. We're going to go through each of the perspectives in regards to how we approach psychological understandings, whether they be disorders, whether they be pertaining to biopsych, whether they be how do we learn, how do we remember things. And so this is just going to help us as a point of reference. So the first little piece of the puzzle is psychoanalytic or psychodynamic theory. This is going to be your thumb. I'm going to do a nice little action pointing backwards, because psychoanalytic and psychodynamic theory is always looking to your past to understand the present. So some of the key people, you guys have probably all heard of Sigmund Freud. He's kind of your, I don't know, pinnacle psychologist. He did a lot of work with free association. He's kind of that like standard, you lay on a couch and you just talk, and they try to figure out like where your subconscious is coming from. So what I want you to do is I want you to label psychoanalytic, psychodynamic on the thumb of your hand, right? Because we're referring to the past in order to understand the present. Another really big piece about psychoanalytic theory and a psychoanalytic approach is analyzing the unconscious, right? You are behaving in a certain way because you have these unconscious desires to behave in a different way. And how does your body and how does your culture and your society kind of limit how you can actually behave, right? He would go so far as to say, like, you want to murder somebody. You want to have sex with your mother, right? Freud was kind of a nutcase as we think about him in like our understanding of psychology today. But in his time, he was the first person to kind of come up with these ideas. And he was saying, you are stuck back in a phase of your past, of your childhood, and because of that you have these like crazy sexual desires, and that's why you're behaving in the way that you are. That's why you have this psychological disorder. You're schizophrenic because insert some abuse that happened to you as a child. So psychoanalytic theory, again, always talking about something that happened in our past is leading us to behave in a certain way in our future. Okay, so that's the first kind of way to understand psychological ideas. Now we're going to go at the end, once we go through all of these, there's 7 of them. We are going to go through like one particular example. We're going to look at test anxiety and say like, how would psychoanalytics approach this? How would cognitive psychologists approach this, right? So recognize, we'll go through each of these. Pointer finger, cognitive, watch me. I'm pointing at my brain because how I think impacts how I act, right? So your pointer finger is going to be cognitive psychology. Okay, cognitive psychologists focus on the way that we think influencing the way that we act, right? That's pretty straightforward because we all, I mean, if you think about it, and we'll obviously dig in significantly more into significantly more detail about some of these ideas, but like we all think about things in different ways, right? Have you ever like engaged in a conversation with somebody who's like dealing with some sort of drama and they're like, so-and-so hates me, they did X, Y, and Z, and like you listen to the whole story and you're like, how did you get she hates you out of what is happening here, right? We all perceive things differently and we think about things differently. So cognitive, pointing to my brain, cognitive, how we think influences how we act, so that we have to study why we think the way that we do in order to understand why we act the way that we do. Guys, I'm going to show you a bad finger because behavioral is the middle finger. Don't take a screenshot. I don't even know if you can do that. But your behavioral is the middle finger. I'm not going to do it again. What do? Read between the lines. This is focusing on learning, reinforcement, punishment, and observation, right? This is like, we behave a certain way because we have been conditioned to behave that way. We're going to talk about like classical conditioning. Specifically, we're going to look at like Pavlov. He trained his dogs to salivate by the sound of a ring of a bell because he fed them food every time he rang a bell. And so the dogs salivated. And so then they removed the food and just the sound of the bell would make the dog salivate, right? That behavior was intentionally conditioned or trained or taught, right? Behavioral psychology, we use the middle finger here because those are the people who might act out, right? The crazy people who are gonna do bad things and whatever, that need punishment or reinforcement to change behavior, right? The next one is going to be your ring finger. Fun fact, not many people can actually put their ring finger up by itself. If you want to try it, I must be a hidden talent. It's not as fun doing all these dumb things without you guys responding to me. I'm going to keep doing it though, because I'm thinking it's going to be more engaging than just me like being like, wah, wah. So I'm going to keep on at it. The 4th perspective, right? That middle finger, ring finger. That's going to be our humanist response, or our humanist psychological perspective as it pertains to understanding some of these ideas. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Specifically, we use the ring finger because it's the finger that you put your wedding ring on. Fun fact also, this was my great grandma's 50th anniversary ring, and my mom gave it to me, so that's kind of fun. But the humanist perspective is all about like shifting the perspective from like what's wrong with how people are behaving to like what's right about how people are behaving. This person is well adjusted, right? This person's doing well, they're successful, they're happy, they're healthy, right? All of these things. What are they doing to achieve that kind of self-actualization? If you've heard about like Maslow's hierarchy, right? This pyramid that you have to have your basic needs met, and then you can start, then once you feel you have your basic needs met, you have to feel safe, then you have to feel connected, then you can start like focusing on self-esteem and self-actualization, right? kind of makes sense. We'll talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs here as we talk about developmental psychology. But again, it's that idea of how do we achieve self-actualization? This idea of unconditional positive regard is huge in humanist theory, right? Unconditional positive regard is like you have a positive outlook on situations, about people, about whatever, no matter what. You continuously have these positive interactions. Again, that's why we're on our ring finger. That's why we're on our wedding ring finger, because when you get married, you have this unconditional positive regard towards another person, right? So to kind of make that connection, help you remember the different perspectives. The last one is our pinky. The only connection I have here is, and Pinky and the Brain might even be too like old school. I don't even think I watched Pinky and the Brain. For those of you who don't know, I'm 28. So I'm like, not super old, not super young, but Pinky and the Brain. This is our biological perspective. So you have biological perspective on this pinky finger that you've drawn. Really, this is looking at brains, neurotransmitters, hormones, genes, like the actual nitty-gritty makeup of our brain, right? How do signals get sent from your hand when you touch a hot thing and your brain goes, ouch, that's hot, right? How did that happen? How did you actually recognize heat, right? When you have a crush on somebody and you get butterflies in your stomach, why do you feel butterflies in your stomach, right? It's because you have this massive release of hormones, right, by your brain recognizing that you have a crush on somebody. So recognizing our behaviors based on kind of those biological perspectives is another common approach to psychological understandings. Now, here's where we're going to get weird. You already have your 5 fingers all filled out, right? We have 2 more perspectives. The next one is evolutionary. I'm going to need you to draw an extra finger. I don't care where it is on your hand, but you have to add a finger because evolution makes us evolve. Maybe, well, actually, no. Evolution makes us evolve to either have or not have certain traits and qualities and responses to certain situations. So really, this is just looking at historic human nature. And like you can basically put an evolutionary spin on like anything, right? We have certain like fear responses because our ancient ancestors were going to survive if they were afraid of lions who were about to attack them, right? Like, or I don't know, like generally we have certain reactions because it was beneficial to our way, way, way back ancestors. Like making connections, like why do we want to have friends? Why do we want to have relationships, right? Because working together made us more likely to survive in the future. Evolutionary, right? Draw that extra finger on your hand, wherever you want to do that. The last one then is going to be sociocultural, and I want you to draw this in the hand. I actually want you to draw a globe, a world, a little circle map of the world, because sociocultural is really getting at that global aspect in the fact that like I respond to things differently because of my experiences growing up in Minnetonka, Minnesota, in the United States, right? At a certain social, socioeconomic status, surrounded by certain people, right? My experience in life has been different than somebody growing up in Afghanistan or in Russia or in France. Like everybody has different experiences and cultures and traditions and religions and faiths, and all these things play into why we behave the way that we do, right? And so when we're talking about sociocultural, this is generally, psychologists take this approach to recognize differences in human behavior. Why does somebody in sub-Saharan Africa respond to stimulus in this way, whereas somebody living in northern Canada might experience or respond in this way, right? So generally when we're looking at sociocultural perspective, we're talking about like what differences exist between human responses and human behavior. Okay, so those are your 7 psychological perspectives. I'm going to leave it here just so we can talk through an example real quick. But I think it's really important that we start with these, and we're talking about psychology, right? These aren't ever going to be like explicitly taught to you again, but you are going to need to be able to apply them to a variety of different psychological understandings, right? You're going to have to be able to recognize Susie has test anxiety. What would a humanist psychologist say she should do to fix that test anxiety, right? So you're going to have to apply these ideas as we move through the course, and it'll become more explicit and hopefully more clear as to like how that's actually going to come into play. But for now, this is just going to be kind of our foundation for our understanding of psychology, because there are a lot of ways to think about it. It is abstract. There is a lot of human behavior that we try to understand. And so starting here is a really good kind of building block moving forward. With that said, I want you to right now, do it right now, take a picture of your hand. Whatever it looks like, I want you to take a picture of it, and I want you to hop onto Canvas, because I am going to just kind of talk you through what our Canvas kind of looks like. Whoa, my sharing is paused. How do I unpause it? I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna reshare. So I want you to hop onto Canvas, and you will see a cover page that looks like this. Okay, I want you to click on Introduction. It'll bring you to a module that says Hand Tracing Discussion. Whoa. You're going to click on Hand Tracing Discussion. I don't know if you have used Canvas discussions before. It's pretty intuitive. You're just going to upload your picture. You're going to reply to this particular thread. And after this kind of lecture, it's not really a lecture, meeting is done, I'm going to have you go back in and just respond to a couple of people on this discussion post. So hang tight. I want you to first upload, make sure you upload to this particular discussion post, and then we'll go from there. I don't know how to do this. Let me see. So I'm going to give you a second, Olivia. Okay, I see some of you can't see Canvas. One thing that you might need to do is I think I'm still sharing my screen with you. All right, I'm gonna deal with this later. But what you might need to do is if you go in to your courses here, you might have to go to all courses and then make sure you star Psychology Ellis. If that's still not coming up, I'll make sure to stay on for a second after I finish up this meeting, and anybody who can't access Canvas will figure that out. But I do first just want to walk us through what Canvas is going to look like as we transition from kind of that perspectives activity into what my expectations are for psychology. So I'm just going to kind of talk you through this again as I'm walking through it. If you have questions, seriously, just unmute yourself and like, hey, Miss Ellis, or like post it in the chat. I'm obvious, as you probably have noticed, I'm not like awesome at monitoring both at the same time, chatting and actually like talking. For those of you who've had me as a teacher, you know I can't talk and count when I'm trying to hand out papers. I feel like this is kind of the same thing. So psychology, what this is going to look like. The first thing that you need to know is that this kind of cover page has everything you need to know for this class. As you can see, I have your first two kind of units completed. Like I said before, this is my first time teaching psychology, so I am still working through and putting together content and activities. So just recognize that that will be available to you when it needs to be available. And I would have done this anyways. Only the information that you need for each like unit or each chapter will be available to you at a time, just to alleviate people working too far ahead and then not having the information that, or not focused on the information they need to take the like test. So I'm just going to show you chapter 1. If you click on chapter 1, it'll bring you to this overview page. You'll see that it starts on Tuesday the 14th, which is tomorrow. You have Wednesday, Thursday, and your first test is on Friday. Now, normally in psychology, there would be a 25-point multiple choice test and a written test for every chapter, okay? That's kind of the standard. Because we've moved online, we are not going to have multiple choice tests. You are only doing a written portion of the test, and that's going to be in the FRQ format. The reason that I have put them in this format is because, one, you have to write a written response. This format is no different or more difficult than any other written test, but it is better preparation for those of you who are going to be taking AP Psychology, so that the format stays consistent through regular and AP Psych. So just note that first FRQ is on Friday, and it's going to cover the scientific attitude, research strategies, and statistics in Psych. So I know that this is going to be kind of a lot just to like go over, and I'm just talking at you. This feels like typical day one stuff, syllabus, what is the class, like all this stuff. So just bear with me as I talk at you for a couple of minutes and tell you just what everything is that you need. You'll notice that this right column says supplemental material, right? This is by no means mandatory. This is completely optional. If you need further information, if you need more instruction, right, you can go here. Different chapters will have different like amounts of supplemental research. This is kind of the intro to Psych chapter. Chapters 2 and 3, that's looking at biopsych. Chapter 2 is kind of a bear. It just is. You are learning all of the parts of the brain, how neurons work, what are neurotransmitters. You're doing all of that in 4 days. So you'll notice that there is more supplemental material if you need it. Here we just have the crash courses listed. You'll see here in this next kind of box over are your tasks to complete. For each lecture, I have recorded the lectures, and you will watch them in videos. You should be taking notes. Now, I have it set up that you could either read the textbook, you could read this, or watch the lectures. You do not need to do both, right? I suggest watching the lectures and using the text as supplemental, like if you don't know a definition or if you miss something, like you can go into the text to get that. But if you're somebody who like, I am a reader, I read textbooks, I remember everything, and like that's your vibe and that's what you need to do, like that's totally fine by me as well. Just note, this is your reading, and then this is the lecture. I have listed the length of those lectures here, so you know how much time to give yourself. Do note that these lectures, for those of you who have had me in class, they include me talking, they include videos, they include like stop and do a little activity, right? So when you see like 57 minutes, that's like not just 57 minutes of me talking. That's like a lot of different ditties and pieces of the puzzle to make it a little bit more engaging and more realistic and true to like who I am as a teacher and how I have taught or would have taught if we were together. So just recognize that. There are formative checks along the way. You won't have one every day. I'm kind of aiming for like 2 to 3 a week, depending on if you have an FRQ. This week you have 2. And these are just to really check and make sure that you are getting the content. I am not grading them. I repeat, I am not grading them. They are participation grade only, right? Do them for your participation points. But if you get like 5 questions wrong, I don't care. You're not going to get points off in your participation grade for not getting all the points right in those formatives. Okay, so that's kind of what this is going to look like. Over here, I have attached the actual PowerPoints themselves because I know that when I was teaching AP Psych this past term, a lot of kids like to take notes on the slides themselves, so you don't have to write everything down. If you're one of those people, the PowerPoints themselves, not the lectures, just the slides, are linked here, okay? So that's basically everything. I will show you the second. We're down a week, obviously, with this COVID-19. Term 4, which is already a shorter term, is a week even shorter. So we combined chapters 2 and 3. So you'll see, obviously, this has more stuff in the supplemental materials category, just because, again, learning about neurons, neurotransmitters, all the parts of the brain. Ooh, my robo thing is going. I'm going to go turn him off, my robot vacuum cleaner. 1 second. Okay, sorry, it's super loud. So obviously you see here, this is more content. I literally did everything I possibly could to alleviate that and alleviate like the amount of stuff that's being thrown at you. But biopsych is hard. I mean, it just is. So just prepare for that. Know that's coming. And I will be, like I said, very available for you throughout the week to talk over all of the formatives, make sure you guys are feeling comfortable and confident, moving ahead in our understanding of those different parts of the brain and kind of like how they work. So those are just like the first 2 kind of units that you have to work through. The other important pieces to recognize is this online textbook resource, okay? Your only homework, I don't know, your only job today when we're done with this is to make sure that you can access this, right? I just want to get all the tech kinks out of the way today so that you guys are good to kind of hop on and like move ahead with all of the content itself. You're going to be, this will bring you to a website that'll prompt you for an access code. Your access code is here. This gives you the textbook online. It also gives you a bunch of like quizzes and practices and stuff. Again, by no means mandatory. I will be giving further insight before you take your FRQ. You will have to take at least one practice quiz on the online resource, just to get some practice with multiple choice. Again, it won't be graded for points. It's just like a did you do it? So just note, I'm going to kind of write this up and send out exactly what my expectations are on a weekly basis, on a chapter by chapter basis, but I wanted to make sure that you have this. Yeah, I think that's it for the Canvas page. Obviously the syllabus is here, your reading calendar is here, but again, this reading calendar is just a consolidated view of each of these kind of week by week breakdowns. So that's kind of what I got for you. I do have, every Friday, I do Friday Fun Day videos, so I'll send those out via Canvas announcements because I think they're fun and you can watch them, or you don't have to. If we were in class, I'd make you watch them. They're things like carpool karaoke and Jimmy Fallon bits and whatever, just like dumb stuff to get excited about being Friday. So look for those. But other than that, it's kind of all I've got for you. I saw a question in terms of the types of notes that you need to take. There is no like mandated notes that you have to take. If this were in class, I would have you making a binder that's organized by unit, that you have your in-class notes, your textbook notes, your formatives, your activities, all of it organized. Feel free to do that. But there is no like mandatory way to take notes. Tomorrow I am hosting like an after school, because I don't know how much you guys like know about what our job as teachers is, but like I can only mandate meetings on Mondays and Thursdays because I'm social studies. But I am, just for the purpose, it's week one. I want to make sure that I'm not overloading you on Monday and Thursday. I'm going to host an after school little meeting tomorrow to talk more in depth about the FRQ and what that's actually going to look like, and like successful tips to do well on it, because I don't want you going into it blindly. The first FRQ is not graded. I don't care if you use your notes. I don't care if you use whatever. I just want you to do it and get a sense of what that FRQ looks like. The rest of the FRQs will be timed. So to alleviate, like, you can't look everything up. You might be able to, like, look one or two things up. I can't stop you from doing that. This is at home. There's only so much I can do, but your first FRQ is not timed. You can use your notes, you can do whatever. It's just to give you a sense of like what an FRQ is going to look like, okay? Do use the calendar function. I've put everything in the calendar for Canvas, so all of your, maybe? I'm gonna click out of that. Out of that. You can see that I have everything for psychology is right here, right? So this is all the stuff. I'm trying to only show your class. Okay, there you go. This is that after school Zoom meeting. I have office hours on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Not mandatory. I'm basically just gonna have a Zoom meeting up. If you have a question, you can hop on. But like, it's not mandatory. I'm just trying to be available to you. Your FRQ is on this day, and you can see office hours, Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday. All of your work is due the night before your FRQ. So all of the formatives, all of the everything, I'm gonna write this up and send it out because I feel like right now this is just a lot for me to talk about, but just, again, note, it's all on Canvas. I've written it all like on those individual, like chapter 1. If you click on that page, it brings you here. All your work must be completed before Friday's FRQ is taken. Below is a pacing guide. All your participation work, that's the discussions, the formatives, and assignments, are due at 11:59 the night before your FRQ. So by Thursday night, you should have this done. So this is just a pacing guide. You don't have to do it all. on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You could crank 3 hours worth of workout on Tuesday and be done. But you kind of figure out what's best for you and prioritize what's best for you. Yeah. So your job after this meeting is done, which it is, you are going to make sure that you have access to the textbook, make sure that you have access to Canvas, and then if you don't, obviously reaching out to me and making sure that we can get those things figured out so that you can, in fact, get started on the work that you need to get started on. That's what I've got. Questions for me? You can either type them in the chat, you can unmute yourself. What questions do you have? Hit me. I'm just such a great virtual teacher. You guys have no questions?
I can't get into the Canvas.
Okay. Why don't, if you can't get into Canvas, why don't you stay on, actually, I don't know if that would even help. Why don't you shoot me an email if you cannot get into Canvas, and I will make sure that I figure out what I have to do on my end to get you access. Do make sure that you've checked your all courses and that the star, if it still isn't showing up, we'll figure it out. Yeah, shoot me an email. I don't know that talking about it anymore is going to fix anything. Optional Zoom meeting tomorrow is going to be recorded. I'm going to try to record as many of these types of things as possible, just so you make sure that if for whatever reason you can't make it, you have another class, you have whatever, you have to go to work, that you have the information that you need. Other questions? Okay, then I'm going to let you go. The content for psychology, your first week is published, so you have access to it starting today if you want to get a head start on it. The pacing guide doesn't start you until tomorrow, so just note that that is the case. If you cannot get access to Canvas or the textbook, email me and we will figure it out ASAP, okay? Cool, thank you guys. So nice to meet you and see your faces and, say hi, get you a sense of who I am. So thank you for hanging out. I'll see you when I see you. Bye, team.